together and together and two. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, nice to meet you. I'm Jane and my husband Mike does everything behind the camera. We're British early retirees, we've got no debt, we've paid off the mortgage, and we live a thrifty, frugal and money-saving life here in Brittany in northwest France. And we've just come back from a fact-finding, house-hunting mission in the south of France. And this week's midweek money chat is all about, can we find a house to buy in the south of France for 150,000 euros or less? Now in this video I've preempted some of the questions that you might be asking, and the question that you might be asking is, why do you want to leave Brittany and why do you want to go to the south of France? Now Brittany is beautiful in the summer, it's never too hot, it's a temperate climate, it's green, it's lush, it's a forested beautiful place surrounded by coast, and it is absolutely beautiful. But I suffer from two things. I suffer from arthritis, and the high humidity here doesn't do that any good, and I also suffer from seasonally affected depression, and the long dark winters of low light levels are really not good to me. And the south of France is somewhere we really want to move to for primarily the climate. It is a dry climate, it is a Mediterranean dry climate. They have 300 days of sunshine a year, and that would be great for my health. We absolutely love the climate there because it's mountainous where we want to go, so it is dry, the air is very fresh. Also because of the mountainous areas, it's not as hot as the coastal areas. And I've got one more thing to say, is that we love the history. It is just littered with medieval castles and old walled cities. It is just absolutely beautiful. That isn't to say that Brittany isn't beautiful, because it is absolutely beautiful, but we are moving for the climate, the sunshine and the air. Yes, it gets hot in the summer, but I think that is a small price to pay. So we have narrowed our search to the Department of Ord, and I'm pronouncing it as Ord because I'm British and that's the way we say Ord. We know full well in French it has got a D sound on the end, so like order. So I'm not going to say order because I'm not speaking French and I'm not talking to you in French right now. So I'm going to use the English pronunciation of Ord. We have chosen the department number 11 of Ord. I've got a ton of reasons why. Economically, Ord is on the ascendancy. It is on the way up. The house prices there at the moment have gone up and they are currently down again at the moment. And about as far down as they could possibly go. I wouldn't say we should sit around and wait for the house prices to drop. I don't think they're going to drop any more. We wouldn't be too worried about the house prices dropping any further because I don't think we'd want to leave that area. Economically, it is on the way up. There's areas of the Ord where there are pockets of joblessness. There was industry in the past and it has suffered from a lack of industry for many years in some areas, and there has been, because of that, depopulation in certain areas. There's growth there. In some areas, for example, one place that we went to, because they had completely refurbished the school and they had completely invested into the school, it was great to see lots of young families had moved into this mountain village. And we also saw in sort of like bigger villages, small towns, we saw areas that used to be industrial and it was all being turned into parkland. It was being turned into like outdoor keep fit gym areas, outdoor building more Lovely places children could ride their bikes, lovely lumpy, bumpy, adventurous bike riding. They were building beautiful parks. You could see money had been spent on cultural centres, outdoor theatres and events. One place that we went to, for example, it had an enormous pétanque, or boule as we say here in the north, pétanque championship going on. And you could see there were playoffs happening. And you know, there were hundreds of people there. You could see it had a buzz about it. It is affordable. There is sadly a lack of work, and the work that there is seasonal. As we drove from the north of Ord all the way down and through it, we just drove through the vineyards, and the work in the vineyards is seasonal. Lots of those workers in the vineyards now are people who've come in from other countries on short-term work visas, or they've come from other European Union countries where they are economically better off, being better paid in France. But there's not a lot of work for local people. So it is affordable because of the reasons that are not good for local people, of the depopulation, the lack of work. In the areas of there, obviously, near the main roads, near the major areas, so for example, near Perpignan, near Narbonne, near Carcassonne, houses were more expensive, taxes were higher. In bigger towns such as Limoux, very popular places to live, the houses were more and the taxes, the property taxes, were much higher. To give you an example, there were plenty of houses we could afford to buy, and we pay for this house here in Brittany €750 a year tax for a 100-metre square house. The same size house there, the taxes were £2,500 a year. So you can see why, yes, we could afford to live in more popular areas, but economically it didn't benefit us to be where the work was, and it did benefit us to be where, in the depopulated areas, the smaller towns, the smaller villages, that, like I said, we could see improvements being made because the property prices were cheaper and the taxes were a bit cheaper. So not only did we narrow our search in the south of France to the department of Ord, we narrowed our search to the Ord Valley, because running through it is the huge river that gives it its name, and it runs from the Pyrenees and off it goes on its merry way. We do know that downstream the Ord has flooded. We visited Limoux and we stood very much high, many meters above the river, and saw on the building how high that river went in 2018 and 2020. So we've seen that. We know that. We know lots of the work that has been done there has put the taxes up. So we are aware of flooding before anybody says kindly in some kind of warning, did you know the river owed floods? So upstream of that, it is not in the floodplain. The floods are not so bad. Does the river rise? Yes, it does. So we are aware of that. And the other reason with the Ode Valley is it is far enough from the ski slopes and it is far enough from the Mediterranean, which makes it slightly less popular as a place to live. And that in turn makes it affordable. And that's why we would be able to afford to buy a house for 150,000 or less in the south of France. I mean, it's still an hour from the ski slopes. We saw the signs for Camaret, for the ski resorts, and we drove to Perpignan, which is, you know, walking distance, well, I don't know, 15 minutes walk to the sea, I think.
15 or 20 minutes.
15 or 20 minutes
Yeah.
walk? Anyway, it's very close. So yes, far enough from the sea, far enough from the ski slopes, near enough from the sea, near enough from the ski slopes, that it made it affordable. So let's talk talk about what we can afford there, and most importantly, if your budget was like mine, at 150,000 or less, the compromises that you would have to make. So let's start with this. House size, house plots in the main are going to be smaller. But there's only the two of us. We wouldn't need a big family home. I mean, big family homes there with room to park a couple of cars and maybe a swimming pool in the back garden, you're looking at between 250 and upwards. So on average, 350 would buy you a big family home with a swimming pool, all fixed up, ready to go. So you can imagine at 150,000, there are compromises to make. And the houses that we looked at in particular are houses that Mike and I called the jokers in the pack. They had good things for us and maybe bad things for other people. So let's go through them. Almost all of them, except for one that we saw, were all people's second homes. And that means that they haven't done things in their home that we would probably want. They didn't have what I would call a proper good kitchen. They didn't have what I would call a proper heating system. They had little plug-in heaters here and there that they might use on a spring evening if it got a bit chilly. But none of them had a heating system. None of them had a cooling system. Now, the Airbnb rental that we stayed in had an aircon unit on the wall, and a big box outside. And it was very clever, and I thought that's the kind of thing we would have because it heated and it cooled and it dehumidified. So there's the compromise. Every single house that we saw within our budget would need some kind of heating or cooling system adding to it. And they were all ex-holiday homes. Some of the houses that we saw, for example, in the beautiful town of Quillon, the houses that we could afford were all on the main road. And when I say main road, I mean trucks thundering through. So yes, we could afford the houses and they would be very good, but we wouldn't be able to hear ourselves think. And I just wouldn't want to live with that level of traffic noise. Some of the houses that we saw, which were not in the floodplain, were on the river. Two houses that we were taken to see were on the river. One was on the river and it needed fixing up. We could have done that. But the river noise is loud. I was really quite surprised because we're there in April. There's still a lot of water in the river. Having a river at the bottom of the garden was loud. And then when we went to the village called Aksat, and we looked again at a lovely house with a huge balcony overlooking the river and a roof terrace overlooking the river. When Mike and I stood on the roof terrace, we had to raise our voices to speak over the river. So rivers beautiful, rivers are noisy. Now, the other compromises that you'd have to make at that budget is we went and looked at some mountain houses that were above the ski line. And you passed a sign that I have never seen in all of my life that said you had to have your snow tyres on or you had to be carrying your snow chains, and there was a hefty fine if you didn't. And what we did notice in around that area, a huge amount of people have 4x4 vehicles, four-wheel drive vehicles, and very sensible. And if you're going to live up there above the snow line, you are going to need to spend more money on a vehicle, and a lot of people have all-weather tyres, so they keep kind of the snow tyres on the car all of the time. The other part of it is if you are in the Aude Valley, you are surrounded by mountains, and the compromise of that would be if you were on the north side, some of the mountains will shade you, which in the summer, which is May, June, July, August, September, 5 months of summer there, where it's over 30 degrees and sunshine all the time, you might be glad of it. But that does mean the other months, you might wish that you had a bit more sunshine. So there's compromises. The positive sides of these, though, living by the river, you've got a beautiful view. you're living by the river, you're looking at the Aude Valley, you're looking at the foothills of the Pyrenees all around you. Lots of the 2 ex-holiday homes that we saw, for example, they were ready to go. One that we saw at 150,000 came absolutely, completely fully furnished, and it was new. The sofas were new, the washing machine was new, the dishwasher was new, the beds were new, the garden furniture was new, the little lawnmower outside was new, everything was new. So some of that is the positives for the holiday homes, is you got the lot, you got the TV, you got the lot. Some of the positives as well from the negatives as well. The mountain villages, and this is one that we really picked up on, is because they're little mountain houses. Can you imagine, like in medieval times, they built these walled towns and they all kept together. I kept thinking to myself, who were they fighting against? And of course, back in the day, they were all fighting each other for land, for territory. I don't know, were the French fighting the Spanish? I don't know. But there's a lot of history, and they needed that protection. They needed to be up high. They needed to be in an offensive and defensive position up there. So they were built before cars were even imagined. And when we were there in April, well, there was plenty of parking. But imagine this, you live in one of these beautiful mountain villages or little mountain towns, and then it's summertime and everybody comes back to their summer homes. I should imagine another compromise that we would have to live with any of those houses is you could go off to Perpignan to go to the supermarket and come back and think, where the dickens am I going to park? So a compromise of that might be, you went shopping on a changeover day on a Saturday, for example, and made sure you were back home again before lunchtime, before all the visitors arrived, and filled the village up with parking. So there are a lot of compromises at that price ticket. I know some people in the south of France would want more and would be prepared to spend more. But can you buy a house for 150,000? Yes, but there are compromises. So our final shortlist, I beg your pardon, surrounded around the small market town of Quillan, which is written Quillan. Not in Quillan itself. We thought the roads and what we could afford there would be too noisy for us. But if you were to sort of throw a casting net around it for about 20 to 30 minutes in any direction around there, that was where we settled. And we had a short list, and we were able, within our price range, and we were able within everything that we saw, and we've got a lot of possibilities that as and if and when this house sells, that we can go and buy one of those. And they were this: there had to be some outside space. For example, it must have a very big balcony that we can sit on with the dogs, or a roof terrace that we can sit out on. There must be outside space, and we found plenty. So a balcony, a yard, which is a concreted area or a slabbed area, as we call it in English. A small garden, we saw places with small gardens, or a roof terrace. It also must be structurally sound. We don't want to do any rebuilding work. It absolutely must be in a quiet area with traffic. So everything that we saw was just residential. There were no trucks coming by, there were no buses coming by, it was just residential. The other thing that we absolutely, totally want was some kind of a view. It doesn't mean to be a view from every window or every balcony, but at least part of it we needed a view. We thought if we're going to live in the foothills of the Pyrenees, we would like to be able to see them, or we would like to be able to see them from the village. So some houses that we saw, if you imagine on the side of a mountain with a little road snaking its way up the mountain, your garden was you go to the top floor and out the door and up the top. We didn't want that. We didn't care how cheap it was. We wanted to be able to have a conventional house where you open the door to your outside space. And obviously our shortlist was below the snow line. We visited two beautiful places. We both visited Artigues and Marsa. Absolutely cute, quaint, charming places, but they were above the snow line, and we just thought to ourselves, I don't think we've got a 4x4 vehicle budget, and I don't want to be sitting out there thinking like, oh, do I fix my snow chains on now? I'm just not that person. I now want to share with you a little section I'm going to call buyer beware. If you're buying at that price bracket, you're going to come across work that needs to be done. And in the main, the estate agents that we dealt with were very honest. Some said beware, don't spend too much money because this village has got a ceiling price. And some were very optimistic, say that politely, in their viewpoints on how much they thought the house renovations would cost. And this is our second house that we're living in here. So the house that we buy will be our third house. And I'm going to give you an example. The house that we're in now, it has all new double glazed windows. And in 2019, when we bought this place, I'm just thinking of our windows onto the road that have the volley roulants in them, the wind down shutters on it, were €1,400 each 5 years ago. They could even be double that now. So I'm going to give you some buyer bewares. So if a house needs completely stripping out, all the old wallpaper taking off and all repainting, just to buy the paint per room could cost you $160 for plain white paint. Just paint, $160 a room. If you wish to, and some of the houses that we saw, we knew they would need a rewire. A basic rewire, light points, no light fittings, light points, electric sockets to the room, and there is a kind of electrical norms here that says how many sockets there should be in the kitchen, in the bathrooms, in the bedrooms. A basic rewire, the big panel with all the switchy things on it, consumer unit is what we call it in English, I don't know what it's called in French, but just a basic rewire can start at $10,000. So some of the houses that we saw would need a complete rewire, a new hot water tank, they would need some kind of heating or cooling, they would need maybe some small electric radiators putting in the bedroom. You could talk about that whole big rewire being $20,000. You could look at a house needing new windows to bring up its energy rating standards to keep it either warm or cool. You could look at anywhere between $25,000 and $30,000. So buyer beware. Estate agents can be very optimistic about how much a renovation would cost. So we saw a house that was they wanted $137,000 for it, and it probably needed $75,000 renovations done, and they said, oh no, it won't cost anywhere near that. It's about 20. And I knew, and Mike knew, and we gave each other that knowing look that that's either optimistic or just thin. Let's talk about now the buying process in France. So this will be our third house, so I feel like we're old hands at this now. So first of all, you've got to find a house to buy, and I use the website BNEC. And then when you scroll down through the listings on BNEC, you'll see who it is for sale with. And often you can go to that agent's website and get more details than there is on BNEC, because how many photographs and everything they put on BNEC costs them money. And then you'll go through the process of you can contact them directly, or you could contact them through BNEC. And then you have to hand over your telephone number and you will call them back, and you can have really good conversations with them. Now, I speak French, but I do not speak fluent native French. And I don't know if you've ever seen a cattle auction. It's that speed. Sometimes French over the phone at native level sounds like that level of speed of French. And I am polite enough to say to them, could you speak to me slowly? and I'm also not proud. I've also been able, and I can say to them quite easily in French, "Excuse me, is there anyone in your office who could speak to me in English, please?" And often they do, because English, luckily for us, is the lingua franca. So the Belgians, the Germans, the Danish, the people from Netherlands, the Dutch, people from other countries buying here in the south of France have learned English as a second language, and the estate agents will often be able to speak to you in English. Lots of the agents that we went into have multi-linguist staff. So they will have staff that speak Danish. They will have staff that speak German, because in the south of France, in the Aude region, there's a lot of houses that we saw that were owned by Belgians, owned by people from the Netherlands, that were owned by Germans, lots of houses owned by people from Denmark and people from Sweden. So don't be afraid when you get on the phone to these people to say to them, you know, is it possible that we could speak in English, please? And they more than often than not have somebody who can. So like I said, I can speak French, but I certainly do not have native level French, and I do not have business negotiations level French. So there's the first thing. And then you obviously make appointments to go and view. And this is a system that I really like about estate agents here in France. You always meet them at the office. You sign the paperwork before you go and see them that they have shown you the house, and you agree that if you buy the house, you will buy it through that agency, because lots of houses are multi-agency. The other way that obviously that I have viewed some of these houses is I joined some of the local English-speaking community groups in that area on Facebook. And I put a call out saying, I'm looking for a house up to 150,000 in this area, listed all the villages. If you have anything for sale, let me know. And 3 people contacted us and we went to see their houses. So that's the first thing. You make appointments with them, you go and see them. The estate agents drove us around. You need days. I would say you couldn't go and do the viewings in a week. You'd need to come over for a couple of weeks at least. You not only need to go and see the houses, you need to go and see all the area. What's it like on market day? What's it like when the local rugby team is playing another local rugby team and you suddenly think to yourselves, why is there nowhere to park in this town? Why is every pub singing and dancing? Why? And you need to get to know that. You need to get to know that on market day, how big the market is and what it's like to be there. You need to be there when it's hot, you need to be there when it rains, and you need to talk to people like, what's there to do here in the winter? Is this place shut in the winter? So that's the first part of the buying process. Let's go into a bit more detail for you. There's lots of paperwork that you will see when you're looking at a house to buy, and I'm going to go through it. Every house has an energy audit. I don't know what DPE stands for, but it is an energy audit, and it is given an energy rating. And if the house is insulated, if it has double glazed windows, if the roof is insulated, if it has an economical to run heating or cooling system, so if it has a pompe à chaleur, an air source heat pump, something that's modern, that's something that works well, it's got a better energy rating. If it has a low energy rating, it has a warning, and it actually says énergétique passoire, so it actually says it's an energy sieve. Now, it's quite difficult to get mortgages on those houses, and you can't rent them. So you couldn't buy them and then rent them out. So there's other paperwork that you get to see. So you get to see the DPE and all of that. Then you get to see the diagnostics, and the diagnostics find out, is there any asbestos? Is there any woodworms? Are there any termites? Is there any fungus in the house? Is there any problems with the house? Also, they check something called the tutelle aiguë, which means, does all the water from the house go into the drainage system properly? If there is a septic tank, a fosse septique, does it conform to the norms? Is it up to standard? Is the electricity standard up to standard? Is it safe? If there's a central heating system, does it conform? Is it safe? If there is a swimming pool, does it meet the legal requirements, like a fence around it? I'm looking at here, if there are chimneys, is there a certificate of rabinage to say the chimneys have been swept? Are there any certificates for insulation? Once you've seen all of those, and if you are like us, because once we sell this house and we buy a new house, we will be cash buyers, there's no mortgage involved. When this house sells, we will have something signed here called a compromis de vente, which means we agree to sell and the buyers agree to buy. When that is done, we can then make an offer on a house that we've seen, and we can sign a compromis de vente, which is I agree to buy this. Sometimes they ask for a 10% deposit, sometimes not. And then when you're all ready to sell, and it can take normally 12 weeks to go from compromis de vente to acte de vente, you finally sign the acte de vente. And it's a book of pages, they read it to you. You do not speak fluent French, you've got to have a translator there legally. It's something that everybody must understand. And this is where you get your money's worth out of the estate agents in France. Often they will act as the translators. All of them have said that, yeah, I come with you to the compromis de vente, I come with you to the acte de vente. And you don't physically need to be there anymore. You can have all the paperwork sent to you, and you read it all through and you sign it. So you initial each page and then you sign it at the end. And you can do all of everything of the compromis de vente and the acte de vente either with a proxy, so you can get somebody to act on your behalf, and often the estate agents will do that for you, or you can do that over a video link. So we've all got mobile phones, we can all do that over a video link. And then that's it. Now in the UK, there is this nerve-wracking thing where you have to wait for the exchange of money to happen on the day, and you're literally sat there going, can I have the key? Has it exchanged? Can I get in? And sometimes the removal men are sat outside, twiddling their thumbs, waiting to get in. It's a bit more relaxed in France. I don't know when the money changes hands, but you just get, on the day of the acte de vente, you just get given the keys and off you go. Off you go to your house. So let's finally talk about fees and costs. When you see a house for sale in France, whether it's for sale privately or it's for sale with an estate agent, the price you see is the price you pay. Or if you've negotiated, you might have negotiated the money down. But at our kind of budget, it's pretty much the house has come down as far as it's going to come. And most of the houses that we saw, we were told point blank, there's no negotiation on this price. They want 150 for it. You can take it or leave it. But in that 150, the seller doesn't get 150,000. They get that minus the estate agent's fees, which are usually they're quite high. They can be 10% up to 10%, between 5 and 10%. And then on top of the 150,000, we then will have to pay the notaires fees. And the notaires fees are the legal fees for the transaction that takes place. But most of it in that is a tax. Now in the UK, we call that stamp duty. It's like the stamping the ownership of it. It's like a tax you pay. And you pay that no matter what the price of the house is in France. But you can roughly work out that you are going to pay, you are going to pay the notaire 10% of the value of the house. So if we buy a house for 150, we will end up paying 10% on top of that. So it will cost us in total 165,000. So that's an important thing to think of. Some people try and negotiate that 10% down to keep their total cost in there. But like I said, most of the houses that we saw, we were told when we went to see them, look, there's no negotiation on this price. That was quite a long video, wasn't it? So thank you so much for sticking with us, and I hope that you found that interesting. Yes, we can afford a house in the south of France. Yes, we will be off to the south of France. There are compromises, and from what we can see, lots and lots of positives with it as well. I hope I made it clear. If you wish to find out anything about mortgages in France, there's lots of websites to help you on that. There's lots of places that you can go to find out about immigration to France. The French government website on immigration gives you all of that information of how you apply for immigration, how you apply for visas, and unless you are a citizen of the European Union, where you've got freedom of movement, and of course that you can just come. Everyone else from all the other countries, you apply through the French government. Thank you so much for watching. We hope that you found that interesting. We will be sharing a video with you this Sunday. It might even be in 2 parts because it's quite a long video of our trip to the south of France. So we will see you on the next video. Bye for now.